The sun rose over the Indian Ocean on August 27, 1896, setting the stage for one of history's shortest wars. Zanzibar, a small island off the coast of Tanzania, was simmering with anticipation. But no one, absolutely no one, could have predicted the drama that would unfold within the next 38 minutes. It all started with a death, not just any death, but the death of a sultan, specifically Sultan Hamid bin Thuwaini, the 28th Sultan of Zanzibar. He kicked the bucket after a reign of only 8 years. Now, you might be asking, who cares about some old dusty sultan? Well, here's where things get spicy. You see, the British cared a lot. Why? Because they had a vested interest in Zanzibar, thanks to its strategic location along important trade routes and its booming export industries like cloves and, yes, ivory. Britain had made quite an impression on the island. They had helped suppress a rebellion back in 1886, and they weren't keen on losing their influence there. But the real curveball came with the sudden demise of Sultan Hamid. As per tradition, the throne should have passed to his next of kin, his cousin Khalid bin Bargash. But here's the twist. The British didn't fancy this particular cousin. See, Khalid had a reputation for being a bit of a wild card, a notorious womanizer, and a bit of a loose cannon. The British had actually banished him from Zanzibar back in 1889 because of his, shall we say, colorful activities. And now he was back in the mix, and he was back in a big way. Now, before you start thinking that the British were just being hilariously racist, there was more to their disapproval than just Khalid's personal life. The man was a staunch opponent of British influence in Zanzibar, and if he took the throne, he might just turn the island against them. And that was something they couldn't afford. So here's what went down. On August 25th, 2 days before the actual war, Britain dropped a serious ultimatum on Khalid. They told him, "Listen up, mate, if you take the throne, we're out of here." But Khalid, being the rebel that he was, decided to play chicken with the British Empire. He took the throne anyway. On August 27th, at around a.m., the British fleet steamed into action. It consisted of 2 gunboats, the HMS Sphinx and the HMS Dido, along with the cruiser HMS Mercury. In total, they brought along a whopping 200 sailors and 50 Marines. On the other side, defending the Sultan's palace, were around 2,800 members of the Sultan's army, armed with a mix of outdated rifles and a couple of cannons. Now, you might be thinking, what the heck were those 2,800 guys thinking? Taking on a modern navy with cannons? But hey, they were probably pretty confident in their cannons. Zanzibar was known for its strong fortifications, especially its massive stone-built palace walls, which were supposed to be impervious to anything the British could throw at them. And so the battle commenced. Exactly at 9:02 am, the British ships opened fire. It was almost like they were trying to make a statement, you know, to really drive home how serious they were about this whole ultimatum thing. The first salvo from the Sphinx hit the palace wall near the main gate, sending a massive plume of smoke into the air. The message was clear. The British meant business. But you know what? Those palace walls were thick. They took hit after hit from the British cannons without even creaking. It was like they were made of some sort of impenetrable material. So the British, being the resourceful bunch that they were, shifted their focus to the Royal Zanzibar yacht, the lifeline between the Sultan and his ministers. The yacht was moored close to the palace, and the British figured that by eliminating it, they could cut off the Sultan's escape route and force him to come out and face the music. Well, that plan worked like a charm. Within minutes, the yacht was a burning, sinking mess, sending panicked soldiers scrambling for higher ground. Now, here's where things got interesting. The Sultan's palace wasn't just a symbol of his power. It also housed a bunch of his weapons, including a couple of cannons that he hoped would give him an edge against the British. But those cannons were useless without trained soldiers to operate them. And those soldiers were nowhere to be seen. You see, many of the Sultan's troops were still stuck inside the palace, too afraid to venture out and face the relentless British barrage. Others were desperately trying to fix the holes in the walls with sandbags, but they were working with a dwindling supply of sand. Meanwhile, the British kept up their bombardment, making any repairs nearly impossible. But wait, there's more. Not only did the British have superior firepower, they also had a secret weapon, a spy named Asad bin Salim, who managed to sneak into the palace unnoticed. His job, deliver a message to the Sultan, telling him to give up and save his men. Now, whether Asad actually delivered the message or not is debatable, but it makes for a great story either way. As the chaos unfolded, the British sent in a landing party of Marines to secure the area. Armed with rifles and pikes, these tough-as-nails soldiers charged into the fray, taking on the Sultan's men at every turn. Some accounts say that the Sultan's men put up a good fight, but they were ultimately no match for the disciplined British Marines. Others say that the Sultan's men barely put up a fight at all, perhaps realizing the futility of their situation, or maybe they were just plain scared. By 9:35 a.m., the Marines had taken control of the palace grounds, leaving the Sultan and his remaining men with no option but to retreat into the palace itself. But by then, it was already a futile gesture. The British were on the verge of breaking through the palace walls, and it was only a matter of time before they entered the courtyard. By 9:40 a.m., it was all over. Khalid had fled to the German consulate in his pajamas. The war was effectively won before most people had even finished their breakfast. Now, let's talk casualties. Over 500 Zanzibaris lost their lives or got wounded during the conflict, while the British had just one sailor with a minor injury. And you know what's even funnier? The British didn't even count that sailor's injury as part of the war. They blamed it on a pre-existing medical condition. So technically, the war was fought and won with 0 casualties. The immediate aftermath was pretty straightforward. The Sultan's army laid down their arms and Zanzibar fell under direct British rule. Khalid, who had hoped for support from the Germans, was shipped off to exile in a rather fancy hotel in Seychelles. As for the British, they continued their imperial march across Africa, cementing their position as a global superpower. In the years that followed, there were protests, there were murmurs of discontent, but nothing ever came close to toppling the British stronghold. Zanzibar became a protectorate of the British Empire, a territory that enjoyed some autonomy, but was ultimately under the watchful eye of the imperial giant. But why does any of this matter to us today? Well, the Anglo-Zanzibar War, though geographically distant and seemingly obscure, holds a mirror to the dynamics that often go overlooked in our world. It was a clash between two worlds, the fading glory of an age-old empire and the rising tide of colonialism. If you learned something new today, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more bite-sized history bombs, and ring the bell so you never miss a wild moment from the past. Trust me, there's a lot more where that came from. Thanks for watching.